Hear me. Thank you all. My name is Randy Shaw. I'm the director of a Tenderloin Housing Clinic, and we've sort of created this Uptown Tenderloin organization to spearhead all the activities to market the Uptown Tenderloin. And I really thank everyone for being here today. And obviously, the Tenderloin, I've been down here since 1980, and we have not always been a straight upward track in the last 30 years, but I think people can all agree in this room particularly that over the past few years we've made tremendous gains. And I've never been more enthusiastic or optimistic about where this community is going. From when the first time I met Leroy Looper in 1979, when he said, "You guys should come down and try to help out the Tenderloin." So it's been a long journey. And you know, when we tried to attempt to create a historic district a few years ago, and again, that whole historic district came about through the generous funding of the mayor's office that has continually supported so many of our activities down here in the last few years. When we created a historic district, we said, you know, the problem with the Tenderloin is it lacks a positive identity. You know, if a crime gets committed on Folsom Street, it's a Tenderloin crime. A murder on Geary Street is a Tenderloin murder. Something good that happens on O'Farrell is Lower Nob Hill. And we wanted to say, no, we really have a historic boundaries. And fortunately, we got funding to hire Michael Corbett, who is here, who did all of the historic work, all of the plaques you see, all of the information we know is from Michael Corbett. Michael, you want to stand up and just sort of... And so we became the Uptown Tenderloin National Historic District. And then, you know, when I would take people around on tours and tell them all the great history, they'd say, hey, that's really great. You know, I didn't know that, and I didn't know this. And I realized, well, you know, we need a way where people walking through the neighborhood appreciate our rich history and tell their friends to come into our restaurants and lunch places and stores, to get people to come here and not be afraid of this neighborhood. So I thought, well, gee, we have all this great history. What if we put historic plaques on the buildings? Because we have 380 contributing structures in this neighborhood, an extraordinarily high percentage. And we have some fantastic buildings, which you can see some of the plaques that TNDC has, and we'll talk about them as we go. But I thought, we need a way where people walking into the neighborhood see this history. And so we decided, hey, why don't we try to do plaques? And it required a few things to make this actually happen. First, we had to fund the plaque project. And is Amy Cohen here somewhere? Because I know Amy was... I want to really thank Amy Cohen of the Mayor's Office of Economic and Workforce Development, because, you know, we can have all kinds of ideas, whether it be the Mona Cara murals that Amy's department also funded, that we had an event for last week, or this, but you got to get someone to fund them, and this Mayor's Office has consistently done that. We had to have someone who's going to coordinate this, because, you know, we wanted to get all these owners, and we started by word of mouth, tell them about the plaques, work out the cost of the plaque, work out the text, all of those things to make this happen. And fortunately, we had someone who's been serving as our museum curator, Sarah Wilson, who's some of your name you all know. You probably haven't seen her face. So I want to really commend Sarah for making this entire thing happen. And of course, the quickest way for us to get the money was to route it through an entity that already had prior contracts with the mayor's office. And of course, if you need something done in this community over the past 5 years, you know who you call, and that's Elaine Zamora, who heads the CBD. And of course, since the North of Market Tenderloin CBD formed, that's when the transformation of this neighborhood really began. That's when the property owners became involved in Elaine's energy, and she took the money and forwarded it to us to make this all happen in an expeditious fashion. So I really want to thank Elaine. Go back there. Because if you check your program, we thank, you know, everyone, a lot of people, so I can't name them all, but there is one person who's not here, but his family is here. I want to mention, because a lot of you don't know this part of the history of this neighborhood. When you look at why is it that the Uptown Tenderloin was able to preserve so much of its history instead of demolitions and other things that happened in other neighborhoods, well, a major reason is that an individual named Bulabai Patel bought the William Penn Hotel right around the corner in 1960. And Bulabai decided that he would have other people from India come to his hotel, and they'd stay there, learn the business, and they went off and bought other hotels in the Tenderloin. And as you can see through even today, we have a whole group of Indian-owned hotels, and those Indian hotel owners did not want to demolish their hotels. They did not want to convert them to tourist use. They kept them low income. That's why we have the Care Not Cash program, because the Indian hotel owners kept their properties low income. Now, Bhulabai is still going strong. At age 90, he's now living in India. But I did ask his son and his grandson, Raymond and Pramod Patel, to come here and just to be honored here for thank you for coming, for all they've done. And as they're both, you know, they have hotels in the peninsula and all. Pramod said he was born in the William Penn Hotel. So that's history. And that spawned so many of those in this audience who bought hotels because they had that experience at the William Penn. So thank you very much. And the last thing I want to mention is, you know, we're trying to use the history to really galvanize this community and say, this is a historic neighborhood. People should come check it out. And people need to invest in the neighborhood, make it a better place, not have people being afraid to come here. And I had a conversation with one of our, you know, unusually young entrepreneurs who runs a place called Bourbon and Branch, which is a remarkable historic speakeasy, Doug Dalton. And I asked Doug, and Doug, where's Doug? Doug is here somewhere. I saw him earlier. There's Doug right there. He's being very, anyway, there's Doug. So I said to Doug, Doug, what drew you to the Tenderloin? And he said, hey, we just love the history. We love the history. And I'm quoting Doug at his permission repeatedly on that because it shows that people are excited about the history and they want to make this neighborhood special. And for the residents, the pride is already there. We were seeing the Midori Hotel on Hyde Street. We saw one of the tenants taking a picture of the plaque. You know, my organization leases the Union Hotel where a famous science fiction writer named Fritz Lieber lived, and it's on the plaque, and all the tenants are all excited. It's instead of tenants and low-income people feeling they're stuck in the Tenderloin, I've really screwed up my life to end up here. There now is a sense of pride that, hey, I live in the Uptown Tenderloin Historic District. That's really cool. Look at my building. So that's what this is ultimately all about, the residents here, making them feel better about their lives. So with that, I do want to do a brief introduction to Don Falk of TNDC, who made this beautiful building. I was here at the Ambassador Hotel in 1982. I don't know how many others were here back in 80 and 82. Didn't look quite like this. Now, I know Mayor Newsom spent a night here. Mayor, I don't think it looked like this when you spent the night here. Yeah. Very different. And in fact, we honor Hank Wilson, the great Hank Wilson, in the plaque. And I want to mention Hank loved the building as it is now. But TNDC has done so much to save our neighborhood. We don't have to worry about gentrification because TNDC's acquired all the properties. And we have so much of it off the speculative housing market. And nobody has done more to save this neighborhood than Don Falk. So Don, thank you, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks a lot, Randy. You all know Randy is the driving force behind this entire effort. I first met him when I came to the Tenderloin in 1994, and TNDC and the Housing Clinic have enjoyed a great partnership for nearly 3 decades. It's so appropriate that we're holding this ceremony here at the Ambassador. This was once the site of an old mansion that in 1878 was converted into the Tivoli Beer Garden, which offered musical entertainment, and then into the Tivoli Opera House, which was the principal producer of musicals west of the Mississippi. And you can see some pictures of it over there. It was destroyed in the great earthquake and fire of 1906 and was the precursor of the Opera House, now at the War Memorial. The Ambassador Hotel was built on this site in 1911. We can only imagine how many people have passed through its rooms in these past 100 years. It was home to the writer Marianne DeFord, and for many years it was a hotel where tourists would stay at a reasonable cost and be near Union Square and downtown and theaters. In the 1980s, the late Hank Wilson created an informal hospice here, known throughout San Francisco as a place where people suffering from the emerging AIDS epidemic could come to die with dignity. This was before the formal workings of the city recognized the disease, and it was a time when people were discriminated against, even evicted, because of their illness. This was an example of the community rising to create a response to the illness right here at the Ambassador. After the building fell into disrepair, TNDC acquired and restored it in 2002, and it still houses people with HIV and AIDS, carrying on the proud history that Hank created. So the Ambassador itself reflects in many ways the history of the Tenderloin. At TNDC, we know that good architecture can inspire people. And what we know from our experience running the Ambassador is that the beauty of the restored building elevates all of us who live and work here. So TNDC was founded almost 30 years ago to preserve affordable housing in the Tenderloin, but in the process, we became an engine of historic preservation. We have restored 15 buildings in the district. And like the Ambassador, every one of them contributes both to the neighborhood and to the dignity of the people who live in them. Take, for example, Civic Center Residence, which is at 44 McAllister Street. It was once called the Evangeline Residence, named after the daughter of the founder of the Salvation Army. When TNDC bought it, it was still providing 3 meals a day and linen service. Or take one of the true gems of the Uptown Tenderloin District, the YMCA. This year marks the 100th anniversary of its grand reopening. The original YMCA was about a block from here at Mason and Ellis, and it was destroyed in 1906. John D. Rockefeller contributed the equivalent of $8 million to rebuild the Y at 220 Golden Gate Avenue. The President of the United States, William Howard Taft, came to the Tenderloin for the groundbreaking dedication. And now, thanks really to the vision of Mayor Newsom, TNDC will be totally restoring it to house 175 homeless people and a medical clinic. People don't yet see how great this is going to be, but when it's finished, it will not only be another symbol of the Tenderloin's history, but a hub of community activity and a sign of our rebirth. So these are just 3 examples. Every building, every resident has a story. And it's the totality of these stories that make our community what it is. Thank you.
And I want to mention, for those of you who are here who own buildings or know people in buildings who haven't ordered a plaque and now are all excited to do so, we have to order to get the price in bulk of 25. And so we have 7 we've already gotten in the next group. We had 73 in the first group. We have 7. We need just 18 more to order the next group. So tell your friends, if you know people, because we've sort of done a word-of-mouth thing instead of a systematic way we can get more. And we, as I said, I think we have more plaques up than any neighborhood in the United States, and we'd like to even have more. Let me say this about why I wanted to really have Mayor Newsom here. You know, I told the mayor when I invited him that people don't realize this, and I don't think he realizes, that when you look at his legacy, maybe his greatest legacy as mayor is the transformation of the Tenderloin neighborhood. If you look at his tenure and what we have accomplished during this period of time, from the formation of the CBDs to all of these programs, the police chief, I don't know if Police Chief Gascon is here or not, I don't see him, but you know, the police chief, since his arrival, it's really made a difference. Obviously, people almost say it's almost a night and day difference in terms of reduction in crime. And even with under Captain Jimenez, there was an attitude this mayor brought to the Tenderloin which said, hey, just because it's always gone on here doesn't mean we're going to keep it going on here. The Tenderloin residents should not have to put up with other neighborhoods what they don't put up with. And that's a first, because we've always complained that we didn't get the same treatment, that things were tolerated here that were not tolerated elsewhere. And this mayor made it clear from his first day that was not how it's going to be. And as I said earlier, in terms of the plaque program, the Mona Carone murals, the banners that are going to be forthcoming, so many of the things we have in mind are our museum, the original Joe's, the Taylor Street Arts District. We could have all these great ideas, but if we didn't have a mayor who was committed to implementing them, they'd just be ideas, and nothing would have happened. And this mayor was. And I remember I used to see him. My office is on Hyde Street, and I'd see the mayor regularly. He'd be always across the street. I'd get a buzz from upstairs, you know, the mayor's across the street. Why is the mayor across the street? He liked being on Hyde. He'd see people hanging out on Hyde, and he'd talk to them, wondering why they were hanging out there. And one day, if you don't mind me telling this story, because it's true, I see him at the corner of Turk and Hyde, and there was this parking lot we've had a problem with for decades. You know, where there's people like dealing drugs and doing stuff in this parking lot. And I walked over, I showed the mayor, he says, we can't have that. Within 2 weeks, we got an entirely new redesigned parking fence around that lot, and the problem is pretty much eradicated because he took it into his own hands. So I'll say this. You may be only in your last 9 months of mayor here in San Francisco, and you may be going on other pastures, but there's a lot you can still do in the next 9 months for the Tenderloin, and I'm sure you will. So I want to thank you, Mayor Gavin Newsom.
Well, thank you. With absolute sincerity, it means a great deal for you, of all people, to say that, because I know the work you've done. No, I say that not in a pejorative sense, in an honest sense, because, over the years, Randy and I may have had some disagreements. Folks in this room, we've had some disagreements, but I've never denied your advocacy and your constancy and your faith and devotion to this district and your hard work. So I mean that with sincerity. It means a great deal that you said what you said, so I'm very honored by that introduction. And Don, you and I are old friends, and Don knows what I feel about him and the great work that TNDC does. They just do it better than anybody else, and you're a model, and you continue just to outperform in these stretch goals and the incredible work you do, turning people's lives around, improving the paradigm that homelessness can be solved. We don't think it, we know it, because we have too many examples of people's lives that have completely changed. And so it's all about scale, it's all about capacity. Good enough never is, and we constantly have to do more. So thank you for all of your good work. Briefly, it was mentioned that I spent a night here in the Ambassador Hotel. You may have wondered if I had a tough night and I just ended up here, or I had perhaps a different mission coming down here. It goes back to the days when there were only VCRs. It wasn't that long ago, it feels like, but my first days as a member of the Board of Supervisors, someone came down with a videotape of the Ambassador. And it was so horrific, so extraordinary. I still remember the images. They're indelible. I still have that tape, in fact. And they said, you need to get out there. I'd just been appointed to the Board of Supervisors. And I went down. I took their challenge to come down to the Ambassador. And, Don, you referenced the issues of HIV and AIDS. Was dominantly housed with people with HIV. And at the time, God is known, it's a true story. And I didn't believe it. I thought it was overstated. There was only one bathroom working on the 4 floors. And here are folks with all kinds of medical issues, all kinds of challenges, and everybody sharing a bathroom that was so horrific, so extraordinary, it would just knock my socks. I really just shattered some of my perceptions. And as a consequence of that, I started spending a lot of time here and in the mission in single-room occupancy hotels, trying to understand the conditions, trying to highlight them, had a series of hearings about them. It led to a sprinkler ordinance that we passed where we required sprinklers because we started to see a lot of fires in these SROs displacing a lot of people. And it led me, interestingly, to meet this young man named Chris Daly, who had some interest in becoming a supervisor. And I became, and I don't know many of you know this, I was the first elected official to endorse Chris Daly as an activist because of the work he was doing with SROs. And the recognition, we started to get to know each other, of my sincerity on this issue and trying to make some improvements. That didn't work out so well, necessarily, in terms of the relationship, but it initiated from the right place, and the passion is continuing, and I think we both certainly share the same goals, sometimes a different approach to get there. And I am so proud of the work that's been done here. I remember when we had the official groundbreaking in this room with the new ambassador, and I'm so pleased to see that work continue. Amy Cohen and the great work, Darius Crayon, the great work they're doing, the Emma Myers Office of Economic Workforce Development, and of course Dar doing all the homeless outreach. We know, as I said, good enough never is. There is no having made it. It's not a static problem. It's very dynamic. It's constantly evolving and changing, and we have got a lot of work to do. But I'm very pleased with this effort. I know this effort goes back to, 1983 formally. There was some concern initially that this may begin a process of gentrification, which has always been the concern down here, and it was shelved until a few years back where folks said, with the CBD and the good work Elaine's doing, that we have a stabilized approach, that we know how to deal with the issue of gentrification in a more enlightened manner where we can make investments without displacing people and providing define a framework where people for generations can come to San Francisco and live their lives out loud and build the American dream. And so in many ways, that's the historic reference that we're acknowledging today. The 73 plaques that have been purchased, 380 buildings, which is rather remarkable, that create an anchor past, present, and future. And I appreciated your example of people with pride coming next to these plaques and feeling a sense of self because they feel a sense of connection to their place in life and connecting it to the narrative of other people's lives. So it's with that sense of pride and spirit that brings you all together. I'm happy to be here and very honored by the extraordinary work all of you have demonstrated and the good work that obviously, clearly, needs to be done as we move forward hand in hand to continue to make the prime progress that we have over the last few decades. So thank you all very much and congratulations.
You want to unveil the plaque? So what we're going to do, just to clear, he's going to unveil the plaque of the ambassador and then bring it down and sort of the picture of him installing it, so we get the real good photos for how competitive the media environment is these days. We got to get the unique photo, right?
I haven't even made an announcement. This is all hypothetical. But let's, Don and anyone, come here, Randy, get in here. We'll just all do a countdown. Anyone else, we'll pull this down and. Well, if we could do an audience participation, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. We can do it.
Okay. So what we're going to do then, and the mayor can take questions down at the street level where we're sort of installing it. But again, as I say, we've got a lot of things still happening in the neighborhood to move it forward. So this is just, the plaques are one of it, and we thank you all for coming, and we'll see you downstairs at the street level. Thank you.